Good morning, Troy. Love, we've got news. I was just telling the group that's on live that you texted me about an intensive that you're doing for men that need to work on some empathy skills. And he said, if you know of anyone, that might benefit from this. And I was like, oh, about 1,000 people. So I'm going to put it in the chat. But it's findingpeaceacademy.com. Is for those of you that aren't joining us live, if you want more information on that. So in addition to that, Troy does a men's drop-in group on sexandrelationshiphealing.com every Friday. He does the betrayed partner groups on alternating Thursdays, and he does a work group on attachment wounds. That's the 6-week work groups. He's going to start another one of those in September. That's a specific course to work through, the attachment wounds. Really good stuff. So we're going to offer that again in September. So Troy is, in addition to that, he works with the clients who are in our residential treatment program on alternating Saturdays. So we keep Troy busy. Not that he isn't busy enough on his own, but anyway. So I'm going to put the link to the empathy intensive. If you know of a male that could benefit from that, please feel free to share that. It might be somebody you're looking in the mirror at. Could be. So anyway, so Troy, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Some people were asking me, why are you doing an empathy intensive for men? And the honest answer is research shows that men struggle with empathy a lot more. Women's brains are built differently. And so it's not that women can't enhance their empathic skills, because it is a skill. Empathy is a skill. But research also shows that it's harder for men to be that way. And you and I both know, and the work that we do, especially around sex addiction, how important having that empathic response can be. And I watch it over and over. When empathy is pumped into a relationship, things feel safer, and attachment wounds can be healed, and reparation can be done better. And empathy is also a tool that they use even in really high stress situations, like in hijackings. And the FBI hijacking specialists use empathy. Tactical empathy is what they call it, to help calm things down. So it's something that I've wanted to do, and I looked all around to see if anybody else was doing that. And there are there are little courses, online courses that people can take, but nothing like this. And so I'd love to have men who want to improve their relationships with their partner, or become a better father, or become a better leader in their job, or more influential in their career. That's what this is all about for them. So
and I want to caveat it, like, as wonderful as this will be and as useful as it is, they're not going to magically completely switch and have all the tools and be met, but they will have tools to use and have gained some traction for it. So I love that you're doing this. I think it will be really beneficial. So so we have a question, and this is one of my I've done a lot of research on this topic. So my husband has said that he absolutely refuses to take a polygraph test, but this is very important to me. Is it common for partners to refuse this?
Yes, I guess it is common for some partners to refuse that. And I don't know the motivation for why your partner is refusing that. They can give you all kinds of reasons why they're refusing. So if I'm going to say yes, it is common for some people to want to do that. What I would be doing if you and your partner are in my office is I'd be exploring what that is all about. What's the resistance? Why this is important for you, and how do we use that? It is a standard practice, especially with some people when they do full disclosures. There are other people that don't, and there's controversy around there's controversy around polygraph tests anyway. Like, this is anecdotal, but in the business world, we're not allowed to require our employees to take polygraph tests. And I was working in HR, and this guy came in and he was really afraid that I wasn't going to believe him. And so he went on his own and had a polygraph test, and he handed it to me. And I'm like, I can't take that. Like, I don't want that. I can't take that. I can't accept it. So there's controversy around it. A lot of people use it. A lot of people don't. The more important issue here is that something that you're needing in order to feel like you can build credibility and trust? And what's the resistance around it, and exploring that. I'm curious, Tammy, what your thoughts about that are.
I did a lot of research on this. There is no protocol. I've talked to people who are in the polygraph world. There's no protocol. There's no research. There's no standardized. In fact, with the polygraphers, they were like, well, our society requires that you can't ask these questions. Like, are you completely telling the truth? I mean, like, you can't ask those generalized questions. Most polygraphers are not trained to work with this specific thing. So they are at best a coin toss. I know too many people who have passed who shouldn't, and I know too many people who have not passed who should have, but it is. So I understand that a partner believes, and I think mistakenly, but that's my opinion actually, and it's based on some research, that if he passes a polygraph, now you're going to know he's telling the truth. But I've had partners who've reached out, that, and worse yet, when they're doing this on their own, because I hear that often too, of like, we're running off and doing this on our own, and there's just no plan. So you're basing your whole relationship on the result of a polygraph. What happens if he passes? Are you going to believe him? What happens if he fails? Are you going to believe it? What is the plan? Regardless of that, I think looking for safety, looking for honesty is absolutely imperative. But there's actually ways to do that aren't such a crapshoot, which is, so I'm always devastated when people are basing, that. So it would be interesting to know what your husband's resistance to it is, but I am more interested in, what are you expecting? And if you believe that I'm going to now know the truth, that's not true. You will know some version of something. But if you're doing it as part of a formal therapeutic disclosure, the point of doing a formal therapeutic disclosure is to build a foundation of recovery. So working with qualified therapists that help set the stage for that, you guys doing your work, you having the support, him doing the work, then a polygraph is kind of irrelevant, because you've done the work, and you start seeing those changes. So I'm sorry that is a focus, and I'm wondering if there can be a shift, like Troy was talking about, is like, what are you looking for, and is there a means of getting that would be useful and productive and real, for you. I know that, like I said, I know that there's been a big push, but you've got people that are cops that are, they've got no mental health background. There's, again, zero protocol. I keep looking. There's no protocol on how you do this. What questions are okay to ask. I do know some therapists that use it, and they have come up with something, and they believe, they've got someone that they work with, rock on. Everybody gets to pick. It would just be scary to me to base my whole relationship on a polygraph result. So anyway, that's one of those questions that people won't ever ask again, because but I did my research, and again, with the people who I had these polygraphers, it's their business. I make no money. I don't lose any money. I care about people getting healing. So part of my whole thing was they were trying to convince me of why, and the stuff that they sent me absolutely convinced me the opposite. So be careful. You get to pick. Everybody gets to pick. Pick carefully.
Right.
Okay, next question. My spouse is more empathetic than most. That's awesome. He seems to understand the damage his actions have done to me. However, he is still expecting sex. No therapist, support group, only abstinence from porn and some minor filters. Would this seminar help him? I don't really feel he gets it. To me, this is like porn addiction 101 might be a better, like the work group, or the porn addiction 101. Like, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts, Troy? You know what's going to go into that intensive.
I guess I didn't send that. So I'm glad he's empathic. That's awesome. There's so many different parts in this question that I could go through. You're wondering if the empathy intensive could work, and it could make some difference. But what I'm hearing is, first we want to define what sex is, right? Because there are so many different versions of what that means. But I tell the guys, sex begins in the morning in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Sex begins when you are doing other things like remembering to make your bed, or to say something very loving to your partner as you're walking out the door. So like, that's a really big, broad thing. I know what you're wanting. He wants to get in the bed with you. That's what he wants. That is something that's really important to a lot of people, and to a lot of men as well. I'm glad that he has some abstinence from porn, and I'm glad that he has some filters on his computer. What I'm hearing is that you're trying to convey something to him, and he's not hearing that. And he's trying to convey to you that the answers to all of the problems would be if we just had sex more, and you're not buying into that. And so there's something not connecting for both of you, and that's normal. Like, I can't tell you how many couples I have in my office that we are talking about this particular issue. And sex is really an important part of a relationship. It's not the only part of a relationship. And when we can help the couple step into, and this is I haven't really talked a lot about that in here, but there's this energy, masculine and feminine energy, and it doesn't matter whether you're gay or straight or any of that. There's this energy that when the two energies can come together, it is a beautiful experience. But what tends to happen sometimes is people tend to like be really aggressive, or they tend to be really pull away. And you look at the attachment styles, I'm going to be really aloof, or I'm going to be really like clingy. It's all kind of in that same genre. And then there's no balance. And we want to have this like balanced energy that makes things really amazing. And it takes some work for couples to get there. And we have to step away from the conversation of it's about sex and go to a deeper conversation. And therapists who have been trained in that are the ones who can help with that. It's hard to kind of describe that in the 5 minutes that I'm trying to answer that with you. But you could say something like, I hear that sex is really important to you, and I think it's really important in a relationship. Can we go see someone who can help us maybe work through some of the stuff that's creating the barriers for me that make it feel like I am not in a position where I can do that every freaking night with you. Because there's some things that I need in order to be able to feel safe. And there's maybe some things you need to be able to change some of the expectations you have, but we've been trying to communicate this to each other for a while and it's not working. So maybe we could get some help.
Yeah, and I think I love what you're talking about, the different energies and the expectations. And I often hear from partners who feel like they're part of the porn, like their spouse is looking to have sex with them, but it's not really about them. And so that would be interesting to see what you're feeling about that. Dr. David Fawcett often talks about sensate, focus, touch. And so what Troy was talking about, of like, it starts in the kitchen, of like, you know, it's just the interactions. Are there other things that are not just sex, you know, that are connection points that, you know, help you find that balance, you know, and connection. But unfortunately, you know, with porn, you know, it's stored up in the head, and so many people can go to that fantasy. And I've had addicts who have shared the same thing. It's like, I'm using my spouse, you know, I mean, it's not the connection, it's sex. And as sex addicts can prove over and over again, that, you know, there's not intimacy in sex. So shifting those energies and but really having the communication of what, you know, will make you feel safe, and what, you know, what it is that you're looking for. But I'm troubled that he isn't, like, I say this all the time. I just talked to a person recently, or a little bit ago, that, you know, the acting out is the symptom, you know. So addressing the why did he, you know, choose porn, you know, when you're right there, you know. So addressing the underlying issues, that's what recovery is all about, is, you know, stopping the problematic behavior, but addressing the underlying issues. And just switching to, now I'm gonna have sex with my spouse all the time, you know, is just a shift. So there's help. I mean, there's so many resources. I'm glad you're here. There's a Betrayed Partner work group starting June 8th. Like I said, the Porn Addiction 101 starts May 31st. Great, you know, content. And for the guys that are struggling with online only, the Porn Addiction, you know, is the best fit. For Sex Addiction 101, that is, you know, hookup apps, and, you know, have done in person. And there's probably almost always, you know, porn involved as well, but we do break those groups into differently, because some of them have had no in-person contact. So but email me, TMETAMI at seekingintegrity.com, if you've got any questions. We even put a little video to help discern. We added some videos to the website. But okay, any recommendation for a men's only intimacy group and or a men's only group for men who are sexually abused as children? No local resources in our area. My husband has called various groups on sex and relationship here, so on our sexandrelationshiphealing.com, but was triggered by the attendance of men who admit they have committed acts against children and are attracted to minors. So that's interesting. I did not know about that. I'm gonna look it up, because there is a group for sexually abused men. It was like part of IVAT or something. I'm gonna look it up quick. Do you think of anything specifically?
I don't know of anything specifically, but I do know that there are groups. There's probably even Facebook groups that are for that. Let me I run one of the drop-in groups on Friday. I've never had a guy admit that they've done things against children.
Yeah,
I have had some guys share that they are attracted to minors, and it's troubling for them. They hate that. You know, and we recommend that they go find a qualified therapist. I can understand why that would be triggering for your husband. I think it's September. Is it September when I'm doing the next attachment wounds class?
Yes. Yeah.
For Seeking Integrity, we do have a 6-week attachment wounds class. It's not specifically for men who are victims of being sexually abused as a child, but it does touch on that, and it's a men's only group, and it is a very safe environment for the men to be able to be heard and share some of their experiences there. And that's a low cost option for that. Tammy is looking for that, and I know there are some. I've looked at some in the past that I've given to clients. I would need to go do a little bit of digging, but if you want to email me, you can email me at troy@troylove.com, or Tammy at seekingintegrity.com. Either one of us, we would love to be able to share some more resources, and hopefully we'll be able to put those in the notes on the YouTube channel as well, what we come up with. So, but there are many groups that are out there that are that are kind of like drop-in groups or resources kind of groups. I don't know where you live per se. We don't have anything specifically where I live either that are specifically dealing with that. The truth is, 1 in every 4 girls has been sexually abused, and 1 in every 6 boys have experienced sexual abuse during the time that they were 0 to 18 years old. So it's more common than people recognize, and a lot of guys are ashamed to talk about it. And so even if they found just a men's group, that issue might come up because that's a really common thing. So finding a men's group doesn't even have to be about sex addiction, just a men's group that can focus on men's issues. I'm guessing that issue would come up sometime in there.
Yeah, and Troy does do and will do the attachment wounds, which I think would be a good work group that starts in September. We also have inner child, and the inner child wounds, that happen as part of that. I'm not in the men's groups, but this does happen regularly, that males have been sexually abused. Many of the guys that come to our treatment program, have suffered, as part of that. So our groups are for sex addiction. They are not for sex offenders. There are sex offender groups, that are different than ours. But I did put the ivat.org information in the chat, and I know that there was something, or they may have some resources that you can connect with, but yeah, do email me. I can find, I've had lists of that before, so I can find that again, but connecting in real and meaningful, and even sometimes it's owning, like, I'm really triggered by what you're saying, and getting support to work through that. That's okay. It's like, it's okay to say, I'm triggered by that, and rather than having to shrink away from it, just owning that's triggering for me and understandable. And you know what? I bet another guy in the group would go, me too. So, okay, next question. You use sentence stems often relating to people. Where do we find good relationship sentence stems to improve communication with partners?
Yeah, that I do talk that way.
And I would like you to explain what that means.
What that means? Okay.
Because, like, I know how you talk, but like, what does that mean?
Now I'm on the spot. Not that I haven't been on the spot. Okay, so I'll be talking to somebody and I'll say something like, I feel that way because, and then they fill in the rest of the sentence.
Okay.
Or I'm really struggling to share how I'm feeling about that. What's coming up for me is, and then they end the rest of the sentence like that. And I don't know where I learned how to do that, but it's one of the ways that I help people be able to put words to what's going on with them. So where can you go to find sentence stems? I don't know. I would have
hang out with Troy.
There's a lot of couples apps. John Gottman has one that you can download for free that has questions that you can ask your partner, but they're not sentence stems questions, but they are questions. And there's several like that that are like that. We're just asking a question that would open up the other person to share something about themselves. In the past, and I even got an email just a couple of weeks ago, I have done an online finding peace in relationships class. And as part of that course, you get a deck of cards that has some of those sentence stems. My challenge is trying to find work-life balance and figure out when in the world I can do that again.
So does that mean Troy is writing a new book? That's what somebody, like, there's that work-life balance. Yeah, because writing a book is like giving birth. Everybody that I have not written one, but everybody that I've known, it's just like, Oh, it's a lot. So
Yeah. So I don't have a great answer for where you can find those. But the way you do it is you think about what the person is struggling with, and then you say the first part of that sentence, and then you end and let them fill it in. So even if you're working with your partner and you can see that they're struggling, you can just say, I'm struggling to say this because, and then they will do it. Or I'm feeling, and like, so you can see that maybe they look angry or they maybe look sad. I'm feeling sad because, or what's really being triggered for me right now is, and you say what you make a guess about what you think they're saying. And if you get it wrong, that's okay. Like, this isn't about getting it right or wrong. It actually getting it wrong is amazing because it shows the other person that you're trying to understand what they say, and they'll clarify it. Now, actually, I'm not mad. What I'm feeling is I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that, and then they'll tell you, or they're disappointed and they're like, I'm disappointed that. So that's how you do it, is you tune in a little bit and what you think that's going on, and then you say a little bit, and then you stop talking and you let them fill in the rest.
but I don't, but this is a shift from you look sad, or saying you look triggered, or I think you are triggered, or whatever it is. You're starting the sentence as if you were the other person. Is that
Right. Mm-hmm.
okay?
Yeah.
I put the Gottman information on the chat too. So
Awesome. Circling back to the question about the resources, the 1in6.org has support groups for men who
good.
have experienced sexual abuse.
Oh,
So,
good. Yeah.
But yeah, that's how you do it. And I do that all the time in therapy. I do that when I'm talking to my kids. It's just part of how I talk, I guess. But it's like, I'm sad because, or I'm frustrated because, or I want that because, and then they say that what it is.
Oh, that's, I'm glad. Thank you for the question, because that was really interesting. And while I know Troy, talks like that, I wouldn't have been able to identify that was, a specific sentence stem thing. So there you go. Okay, I have a no sex unless I initiate boundary. He has broken this boundary several times. My SA husband feels unloved unless he connects with me sexually. It has been 28 days. I would like the physical aspect of sex, and yet feel as if I would be contributing to my SA husband's addiction by doing so, especially since he has been unable to respect my boundaries because of his sexual wants.
All right. So there's a lot more information that I would need in order to be able to make a more educated comment about it, because I'm not sure what your boundaries are around that. I'm hearing that you have some, which is beautiful. I don't know what they are, and I don't know how he violates them. I'm hearing that, or I'm reading as you're saying that you do enjoy the physical connection, and yet you also need to feel safety, that is what makes great sex really great, is when there is safety in the relationship. And so that's the challenge he wants. And part of this is general. This isn't the case for every man and every woman, and it's and it it's different in head homosexual relationships, but in general, the women need to have emotional connection before they are willing to open up sexually, and men need to have the sexual experience before they open up emotionally. I don't know why the universe created us that way, but it doesn't make no sense. So there's the challenge. He's coming because he wants to be connected with you, and in his mind, the way that he's going to be connected with you is through sex, and he hasn't learned any other ways yet he can of how to connect with you other than sex. which it's not necessarily his fault. Even if he is a sex addict, it's not necessarily his fault. That's the way that we've been taught our whole freaking lives as men. And then for women, it's figuring out, okay, well, how do I not dishonor myself or violate my own boundaries and disrespect myself when I'm maybe not really ready to do that, but I'm doing it because I think I'm supposed to, or all of that. And so then the woman feels like they have betrayed themselves in that. And so then they feel shame and frustration about that. And so it's figuring out, again, that thing I was talking about, that energy of how the couple can build that energy together. There has to be safety in the relationship to do that. And so he's not honoring your boundaries, which violates the safety part for you, which then makes you not feel safe. And yet you also miss the physical connection, because it sounds like that's something that's enjoyable to you. And so the key question is, he's been unable to respect my boundaries because of his sexual wants. That is the key question that I would be talking about with you and your spouse if you were in my office. Is, okay, what are the sexual wants? And are what are the needs connected to the sexual wants that are not about having an orgasm, like being wanted, being cherished, being valued, being seen, being understood? And is there any other possible way that we can help you get those needs met besides sex, in a way that honors your spouse? And then as your spouse feels more safe, she or he will feel more willing to open up that very vulnerable part of themselves with you. How do we create safety so that that can happen? That's really what I would be exploring.
Well, and she did add that I will not have sex with him unless I say I want it. He broke the boundaries by trying to initiate physically and verbally. So yes, and I'm sure in his mind, I need this to feel loved and connected, but exactly what you're saying is but I feel shame if I give in, then he's broke. Like, yeah, all of that it's so complicated.
It is, and it's the woman is putting up boundaries because they feel betrayed and they feel hurt. Mm-hmm. There's no normal relationship, so I don't know how to say normal, but it is a really healthy thing for a man to be able to go and say to his wife, I'd really like to have sex. Like, that's really helpful. And yet when we have a betrayal wound, how do we manage that? So that's the dichotomy. Like, we tell people to be authentic and open and all that, and then we're like, but no. So that's where it becomes all messy and complicated. And the couple probably needs some help learning how to simplify that and make it less complicated, but have a deeper experience, emotionally deeper experience. And that usually requires some help because we haven't figured out how to do that on our own. I'm hearing that he comes to you because he wants to connect with you. I'm hearing that you want to connect with him, but you need to feel safe. So that's the question. How do we do that in a different way than the way we've been doing?
And there are tools to use. If you aren't working with a qualified therapist yet, I would encourage you to do that. If you are, this is great, material to bring up and go, we're at these crossroads where we're trying to navigate this, and how do we do this differently so that we don't get into that struggle? And he feels hurt, you feel conflicted, all of those negative emotions around that. So, okay. My soon-to-be ex did not choose recovery, so we're getting a divorce, and he's supposedly in recovery now. Part of the reason I chose to leave the marriage is that I was done being hurt and betrayed. Even though we're not together, I'm still being lied to and betrayed, but in a different way. I found out from my 4-year-old that he broke an agreement that we made about not having new partners around our son. I have been working on my healing for about 2 years, but some days it feels almost impossible to heal when the wound continues to get reopened. How can I heal when it seems like it just the hits just keep coming.
My heart hurts with you.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm sad as well about that. You have a betrayal wound that's continuing to get hit. Whether or not he's willing to um, abide by those boundaries or not, or the asks that you have, it sounds like he's not, and there's still secrets going on. That does make it more challenging. Part of what I do a lot when I'm doing the betrayed partners group is ask the question, when he, for example, is lying to you, what do you believe that that says about you or means about you as a person? It doesn't necessarily diminish the pain of being lied to, because that is pain, right? So that's a betrayal wound. And there's a difference between feeling pain and suffering, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. And the where we suffer is that we end up holding on to some stories and beliefs about ourselves that perpetuate the suffering. We all experience pain. That is a part of life. And that's, if you've ever seen the Finding Peace model, like in the center is peace and pain. Like we all feel that. So that finding out from your 4-year-old that he brought a new partner around your son, it is betrayal. And I would imagine that triggers anger and creates a lack of safety. And you're like, who is this person? And all of that kind of stuff. What do you then believe that that says about you as a person? And the three genres that tend to get woven into those attachment wounds are I am not enough, the I am, or the identity genre. I'm not enough, there's something wrong with me, or the safety or trust. I can't ever trust anybody. I can't depend on anybody to show up, or the powerless genre, which is there's nothing I can do. None of those are fundamentally true, but we believe they are true in that moment. So as you sit with that, it's like, are there things that I can do? Are there things that I can do? Can I, as I probably am going to be hiring a lawyer, can I talk to my lawyer about what are the agreements that we put in place for making co-parenting and making sure that we're not introducing, like, are there legal things that I can do? Are there ways that I can talk to him now, because I'm not necessarily going to be married to him anymore, where we can have a different conversation about the protection of the kids. There's a book called Mom's House, Dad's House that was written about 20 years ago, and they've updated it recently, and it's like the playbook of how to co-parent in divorce. And I recommend that oftentimes for parents when they're trying to do that. How do we help do our best for these little kiddos who are like the ones who are going to be hurt the most through the divorce? How do we try to make that happy? And asking, hey, would you be willing to read this with me? So how can you heal when it seems like your wound keeps getting hit? Part of that is separating the belief that there's something wrong with you and knowing that you are enough, that you matter, that you are worthy of love and belonging. You are worthy of having a relationship with someone who is honest and truthful with you, and holding on to that energy. And I don't know how to describe it, but when you hold on to that energy, and that's what you hold on to rather than the negative core energy, things shift in your life, and it makes it easier for you to have boundaries. It makes it easier for you to follow through on the things that you say. It doesn't do anything about him, but it makes you be more peaceful, more grounded, more empowered to do what you need to do in a place of love and light, not a place of bitterness and resentment.
And you're going to be a great mom to your 4-year-old. And it is. I'm going to go back to one of the first sentences, though. You said he's supposedly in recovery now. People in recovery don't break basic boundaries like that. So he might have stopped some of the problematic behavior. He might not. So regardless, like Troy said, whatever he's doing or not doing, less of an issue, more about protecting your 4-year-old and you know, what do you need for your safety? But I put a link for that book, Mom's House, Dad's House, Making Two Homes for Your Child. And there's a kids version as well that may be useful. I have not heard of that one too, so I'm going to add that to my resource list. But just because you leave the relationship or the relationship ends, whatever, you know, whatever happens, does not mean that the pain, you know, all goes away. And there will be things, you know, I've experienced it. So, you know, until your, you know, kid is of legal age and can make these choices themselves, you know, you will always co-parent, you will always co-grandparent, you know, so finding how to take care of yourself despite the stuff that's going on, you know, with him, you know, that it really is about you and safety for you and your son. But you're resilient, you know, and there's lots of people, so you have support. Okay. I am understanding that a moratorium on physical sex should only be implemented with a therapist. I feel spouse is only having lust for sex, not desire for me. He is gone all week and when home on the weekends wants physical intimacy. I am struggling to find want for him. Thoughts?
So I'd be curious what is happening between the two of you while he's gone, or you said he, so while he's gone over the week. What kind of communication is taking place between the two of you? Do you not hear from him at all? Is he checking in with you? And I'm not meaning like accountability, although that may be important, but I'm just like checking in, like, how are you and how was your day? And this is what was a really amazing part of my day, and this is what was really crappy, and tell me about your day, and oh my gosh, I miss this part of you, and that kind of stuff. I'm wondering if any of that is happening or not, because that would be really important. I've thought a lot about this. This is a very strange analogy, but like, so soldiers, there are soldiers who've gone to war, who've maybe stepped on an IOD or whatever, and part of what happened when they got injured is that they lost their penis. I don't know if we're allowed to say that on YouTube, but there you go. They lost it. It's not there anymore. So now, there's a whole lot of grieving that's going to go along with that. How does that man learn how to have intimacy with his partner? And that is like a really big learning curve, but I know that there are men who figure that out. They've learned how to have that intimacy and that connection, and it's just as passionate and wonderful. And it wasn't about the orgasm. That same kind of thought is what comes up for me as I'm hearing that. Yes, men like sex, women like sex too. Men like it a lot, of course, and they want that. Are they looking at it as a way of releasing? They just want to release their energy, or are they wanting to look at it as a way of how do I like sweep my partner off their feet and just let them know that I am just so delighted that they're in my life, and I want them to be part of me and them, and share like what is the experience. Because I'm guessing for what you're saying is he comes home and he just wants the release. So part of that is, well, honey, that's not working for me. I miss you too. I want to have those kind of experiences too, but here's the things that I need to be able to feel more wanted and cherished and desired by you, and being able to be open with him about that. And maybe you've shared that with him, and if he's not hearing that, it's because he's not connecting the dots, and a lot of guys don't know how to do that. They say they hear you, but they haven't connected the dots. That's part of why we're doing the empathy classes, help them connect the dots, but is helping you understand that your needs matter just as much as his do. And there's something missing that's in the relationship that's causing that disconnection. And part of that is, I don't know, because I don't know your situation, but I can hear the loneliness in what you're sharing, and that you want more than just to have him come home and just have sex with you. Like, you want something more than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I read, having lust for sex, not desire for me. So that, very, very different experience, for what you feel he's looking for and what, would be beneficial for your relationship. So, okay, next question. I would like to belong to a part of an SA group for partners, but there is nothing in the area I live in. Any online suggestions? So an SA group for partners. So well, I will put it in the chat, but on our sexandrelationshiphealing.com site, there are references to all of the S groups, and lots of other things too. So I will pull that and put it in the chat. But if you haven't found the amazing betrayed partner groups on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, I think I counted yesterday, there's 5 different ones at different times, maybe 6, but don't hold me to that. But check the schedule. There's events has the calendar, online, it's so helpful to have 2 screens. So online support groups has the list, and it says, this is good for partners, this is good for addicts, this is good for couples. So I mean, we went through and color coded them and put letters by them. So I would invite you to look at the list on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Under the resource tab, though, is a list of all of the different 12-step groups, and it says for sex and porn addicts, and then there's 12-step groups for other things. I mean, so we've got 12-step groups for partners of addicts. Just one caveat: many of the S groups for partners tend to use the codependent language. So as with everything, take what you need and leave the rest. Many people find that those connections are really helpful, but that language can be, pathologizing and blaming to partners. So prodependence, and I just happen to have gotten my copy of the clinical edition of prodependence, the practicing prodependence, the clinical alternative to codependency treatment. Codependency is not in the DSM. So this is now the clinical version, so that therapists will learn more, but you can always, point that out to them as well. So again, lots of good support, free support on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, including today at 12:30 Pacific time. There's a betrayed partner group. There's another one tomorrow morning at 8:30 in the morning. Is it your week this week for the 11 a.m.? Yep. So tomorrow.
Yep.
Tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time, same channel. Troy will be on with partners for the attachment wounds. So lots of good support. I will put the link in the chat. And then somebody did write it. Oh, do you have thoughts on that too?
Oh, I think you answered.
Oh, okay. So somebody put a question in the chat, so I'm going to read that. My partner had an issue with pornography. He decided to stop. He switched over to using my nude pictures to masturbate. The masturbating becomes very compulsive and out of control. There was that disconnected. He is now in program. He mentioned that he wants to take some pictures of me during vacation trip. Oh, we have planned for next week. That idea makes me nervous because I think he can relapse. I really don't know if it is healthy at this moment. He shared that he hasn't looked at the pictures on his phone since he started the program. I don't know if looking at my pictures can trigger old behaviors. That's a great question and complex. So what are your thoughts, Troy?
All right. It's interesting. I was listening to a book this morning, and I can't remember the exact words of it, but the gist of it was, it was talking about a heterosexual relationship, but the woman wants to know that her husband is not going to be swayed from his purpose by a beautiful woman, even if it's herself.
Wow.
And I thought that was a really interesting comment. The book talks a lot about a man living his purpose. and living his mission, and 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 doing something that is fulfilling for him, in making the world a better place, and whatever his mission happens to be. And that a woman can feel more trusting in that man if he is unwavering in his mission. It doesn't mean he's a jerk. He can be empathic and understanding, but he's able to say no to things that are going to take him away from his mission, including a beautiful woman who happens to be his wife. And that when he is not detracted from that, that helps her feel safer. It feels like I can depend on you. And that was a really interesting thing that I had never considered before. Is it wrong for a man or a woman to want to have like beautiful pictures of their spouse that they look at, or their partner and look at? I don't think it's wrong. You're worried that he's going to use those to act out. The key thing, and we've talked about this in past sessions, is whether or not he's objectifying. Does he see you as a whole human being with feelings and talents and abilities and gifts and all of those things? Or is he seeing you in that, and this is horrible to say, but in that moment, is he just seeing you as like a sex toy? How does he see you? And then how in turn do you see him? So as a man is entering into, it sounds like he's starting into recovery, which is amazing. Part of that, we work with them to help them shift that and understand, like, you're not going to get anywhere, especially with your significant other and your children and the people that you work with, if you have objectified them. And the way we objectify them is we see people as tools that we can use, or we can see them as obstacles in our way that we just need to push out of the way, or we see them as a piece of trash on the sidewalk that doesn't matter and we don't pay attention to it at all. And we're not going to get anywhere in our connections if we have objectified someone. So I can understand your concern. It's okay that you would even share that with him and say, hey, I don't want to be seen as an object. I want you to see me as me, with all my talents and abilities and gifts and my flaws and defects and all of me. I want you to see me as all of me. And if you're using those pictures as a way of triggering your sexual desire, I don't feel comfortable with that at this point in early recovery. It just doesn't feel safe for me.
And you said he's in program. So what does his sponsor say about that? Is he working with a qualified therapist? That would be the stuff to, like, what's in his inner circle? What is, what is his plan? You already have evidence of, he stopped looking at porn, but then he started looking at your nude pictures. So that, I mean, it's the same. We have guys that are watching TikTok and Instagram and all that and say, well, it's not porn. Yes, it is, so, or erotic books or whatever it is, but yes, it's the same area of the brain. It's the same problem, and it's still the same disconnect and the objectification that Troy is talking about. So what is his real purpose in doing this? Has he talked about this with his sponsor, not just you, but his sponsor and his therapist? And, what is he doing? And why is that important, particularly so early in this, in his recovery, this vacation? Maybe it's an absolutely not, and we can discuss it next year on what would be appropriate, or it's the pictures of the two of you, on the vacation. So there's lots of different ways to look at this. I say, trust your gut, because you're uncomfortable about this. It's, to me, that would be important to listen to, is like, what are you feeling about that? And if it doesn't feel safe for you, at the end of the day, the other thing I'm going to say about this too is that you can't make him relapse. You can't keep him from relapsing. So what he chooses to do with pictures or whatever, is up to him. So you aren't you aren't, if you say yes, he can take pictures and he relapses, it's not your fault. That's what I'm ultimately trying to say, is what he chooses to do, how he chooses to engage in his program, how he chooses to get help, that's up to him. You can support that on some level, but at the end of the day, it's your safety. What do you feel comfortable with? Are you going to feel, good about this or creepy about it? I think listen to your gut, about that. But for him, it's like, what does his therapist say? What does his sponsor say? I think we're out of questions. So I'm going to do one more, so I'm going to throw it in the chat because the people that joined late won't be able to see it. But talk one more time about your Finding Peace Academy intensive. Yes. So I'm just going to put that in there again. So yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you talk about it. I'll put the link.
So the Finding Peace Intensive is 3-day in Yuma. It is in Yuma, okay, in July. So you get
but you're going to be busy. It won't be like you have to worry about it.
You'll be in air conditioned, but one of the fun things we'll do is take you outside and you can crack an egg on the sidewalk. Watch.
And I live in Arizona too. You actually can do that. People have baked cookies outside on, yes. So,
but we'll be inside. But the intensive is for men to deepen. It is experiential. So I don't like sitting and being lectured at. It's all about practice. So from the moment that we start that Thursday morning, you will be doing exercises that will start helping you see how to do empathy really well and how to do empathy really crappy. And the goal is by the end of the time, you will have learned some key skills that you can implement in your conversations with your partner, with your children, with your coworkers, anybody else, to help them feel heard and understood so that you can resolve conflict and come to a greater problem solving with whatever the dilemma happens to be. And so you'll walk away with you have practiced some skills that you can then implement when you go home, so that you will know how to be able to use the skill in a more effective way in all areas of your life.
So if you are, how many people are you limiting this to?
8.
There you go. Okay. So if you are a male or a male that could benefit from this, findingpeaceacademy.com, and you'll see the information on it, or you can click on the link that is in the chat. And now we have a question. So our last question is, I struggle with my PA husband who is so disconnected. Obviously, he is focused on seeking anything that makes him feel better. TV, games, surfing the net, news, seriously, avoiding life 99.9% of the day. It is so sad for him. You are right. But it affects me to live in this empty space. So yes, it does.
So it sounds to me like he has an avoidant attachment style, which happens because he has a lot of wounds and he's afraid to be vulnerable. And so he's basically disconnected from the world. And then he will probably turn to things that add no fulfilling connection to him as a way of trying to cope with the emptiness that he's feeling. And I'm sure that it affects you as well. There's not a lot that you can do to change that. You can whine about it, you can complain about it, you can talk to him about it, you can get angry about it, like you can do all kinds of things until he recognizes that which he loves, he gives time to, and he recognizes how much time he's giving to the things that aren't that important, and he wants to shift that. It's probably not going to change much. Hopefully he can have some go to groups and therapists and stuff like that to maybe help get him out of that. He may also be dealing with depression and might need some of that going on. But I would imagine that's very lonely for you. And it's kind of like what I said earlier. What I'm concerned about is that you'll connect that with your sense of worthlessness. And I don't want you to do that, because his disconnection and his behaviors are about him and what's going on with him, and says absolutely nothing about you and your worth and your value. And so being able to connect with others who can help you see that. That's why we do the drop-in groups at Sex and Relationship Healing and other places, so that you can know that you are worthy of love and belonging. And you may choose to stay with him, and there's no judgment about that, but you are able to do that from a place of love and support and empathy, recognizing that this is not about you, and that may be beautiful. And you may do something else, but you are enough, and so is he. He just hasn't connected that dot yet.
I agree. And I know many people that stay in the relationship but they have this whole life of joy. And so what he's doing or not doing has less impact on them. They have friends, they have activities, they're doing life, not just waiting for their porn addict, sex addict husband to get a clue. They're really engaged in things and connected, not just with betrayed partners, although I think that is absolutely, key to, working through a lot of this, but, doing things that bring them joy and, are connected. I'm in contact with somebody and she's talking about, her family and traveling to see, I'm like, great, and he's sitting at home, not so, but she's living life, so great. So yeah, do not internalize. This is him. It's his, and it is sad. And he may have clinical depression, and then getting a valid diagnosis for that, could help. But at the end of the day, it's his choice. So, this has to be the last question. I was just going to close the group. So last question. I have a boundary that says my husband can't sleep in the same room until I see him doing recovery activities. He says that it makes him feel rejected and he gets depressed and does not do anything anyway. So how do I get out of this cycle?
I have a boundary. This is my husband can't sleep. He says that it makes him feel rejected. Well, I'm sure it does. But that's your boundary. And then he gets depressed. So we talk a lot about the shadows of shame, and his shadows are probably doing all kinds of stuff inside of his head, blaming you for why this is, your fault and all those things, and why you should just change your boundary and all those kind of things. And then he gets depressed. He doesn't look in the mirror and say, well, what am I doing that makes my wife not want to sleep in the same bed with me? There's got to be something going on here that makes my wife or my partner not want to be in the same bed with me. What is that? Maybe I need to be a little bit more curious about that and look into seeing if there's anything I can do about that, rather than saying you should change your rules, because that isn't going to work. So how do you get out of the cycle? You remember that you are worthy of love and belonging. You come to the groups and let people love on you and remind you that you're enough, and you do your work and disconnect his expectation that that's the way it's supposed to be from your worth. And then you say, honey, you have all the power in deciding when I'm going to sleep in the bed with you again. You have all the power if you made some changes. Until then, I'm going to do what I need to do to feel safe.
Great answer. Okay. Thank you, Troy. Join Troy if you're a betrayed partner tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Guys, on Friday morning. So, and then we will have the attachment wound work group starting again in September for guys. So stay tuned. Lots of resources. As always, thanks for joining. Next week will be Mary Franz with the trust solution for couples. So take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.